Be bold. Be heard. Welcome to Unmute Your Mic with your host, Jessica Bell. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Unmute Your Mic.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. My name is Jessica Bell. I am your host from Kansas City, Missouri, as always. And today I have not one, but two very special guests with me. And I'm so excited for Sam and Nikki to share their story with you. Sam, if you could just start with introducing yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then Nikki, if you could follow.
Hey, everybody. My name's Sam Smith, kind of like the singer. A lot of people always seem to find a way to make that connection. But yes, very common, very popular first and last name. I'm 20 years old. I'm originally from Holland, Michigan. I am a sophomore at Oakland University over in Rochester Hills, Michigan / Auburn Hills. I'm studying communications with a journalism minor. So just kind of looking to explore a little bit more of the field of communication, as well as I'm pretty passionate about writing. So just kind of looking to find myself as a writer as well.
Awesome. Just like Sam, I'm also a student at Oakland University. And my name is Nicole Grindling, but my friends call me Nikki G. And I am originally from Milford, Michigan, which is only 45 minutes away from campus, which is pretty nice. And I am also studying communications with a minor in digital media productions. Something I enjoy doing is photography and videography. And so this podcast is kind of like an extra bonus where I just love to just talk. So happy to be here to do that and to continue on just this podcast with Sam and meet Jessica. So yeah.
And thank you so much. I want to thank both of you for agreeing to be on my podcast today. They also have a podcast, and I will let them share a little bit about that a little later. When I connected with them, I want to say I love connecting with new people and connecting with people who I would never have connected with in any other way, right? So I really love this. And so we had a short, brief conversation via email talking about the topic that we were going to talk about today, which is adoption. And to me, that is something I'm very passionate about. I'm a youth advocate. I've worked as a CASA. And so I would just love to hear Sam and then Nikki, just a little bit about your story and how it's kind of shaped who you are today.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we think it's super important to talk about this. This isn't the first time that we've talked about this. We have done this before on our own podcast. So it's really interesting to us. And we think that a lot of people seem to find it interesting because I think there are a lot of questions that people don't always know about adoption that they like to ask. But me personally, I was adopted really, really young. I was born originally in Detroit, Michigan, so actually not too far now away from where I go to school, about 40 minutes. Little fun fact: I was actually born in the taxi cab, so that's kind of my little unique story about the adoption. Not exactly.
Okay, we're gonna have to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. little weird. That's usually the one that catches people a little off guard. But yeah, no, from Detroit, Michigan, pretty young. I was I think it was around like 1 year old when I was actually adopted. I was in foster care for a brief moment. So I don't really have too much because I don't remember a whole lot, being that I was so young. My story more of lies is where it comes after being adopted. So it was, going to school, when you're so young, it's like kids always want to ask, how come your parents look like that and you look like that? Like, why are you guys different? Right. And it's like, I didn't know how to answer all those questions. And it kind of led me into going into this identity crisis where it was like, who am I? Like, I don't look like my parents. I'm not actually related to my parents blood-wise anyway, right? We don't have the same DNA. I clearly look nothing like them. So it's like when these kids ask you these questions about who you are, and you can't answer those own questions about who you are, right? If I were to ask anyone else, hey, who are you? Oh, you'd be able to answer. You know who you are, right? That's an easy question. So at such a young age, when you're 8, 9, 10 years old and you get the question, who are you? And you can't answer that question, it quickly led to spiraling into, I don't know who I am. And that's a problem. I need to know where I come from. I need to know where I was born. I need to know who my mom is. I need to know who my dad is. Do I have brothers? Do I have siblings? Like where am I from? Like, where are my origins? And so that was like the biggest thing for me, was trying to understand and be okay with the fact that I don't have to look like everyone else. I don't have to look like my parents to be me. I don't need that, I don't need to fit in that way to feel comfortable in my own skin. So that was kind of my coming up of being adopted, was how can I explain this to other people who ask this question of, where are you from? Why do you look like this? Your parents don't. And being okay with the fact that, hey, you're adopted, right? I always kind of tell people, the joke is, hey, I was chosen, right? My parents had to select me of who they wanted. They selected me personally. So that's kind of my little joke I always like to tell people when I'm first telling them I was adopted. But yeah, that was kind of my little coming up of being adopted.
Same here, Sam. I love that joke because I do the same when people do ask me, like, oh, like, and like when I was younger, people would try to bully me by using that, and so I would come back with the saying like, "Oh, well, my parents chose me; they got stuck with you," and so I love it in their face, because honestly, being adopted, it does make you a little different from everyone else. And growing up, I had to embrace that as well. Where like my story is a little bit different than Sam's, where I do remember the foster care system. I was in the system until I was 6 years old. And luckily enough, my family adopted my younger brother along with me. So I do have a blood relative within my family now. And it's ironic because we look alike. And my full name is Nicole and his name is Cole. And so we even like have the same name. But my story has definitely impacted my life, where I feel very blessed with my situation and what the life I could have versus what I have now. And just seeing the situations of what basically what God has done for me in my own experiences and in my own life. Because I remember being in the system, and I remember there was days that I was bullied. There was days that I went hungry. There was days that I didn't know if this was going to be my home today, tomorrow, or the next day. And I look at my life now, where I am in a family full of 7 siblings and 2 great parents that love me dearly. And I see this just blessings on top of blessings. And I might have not been born in a taxi cab, but I definitely was born in a different city. And so I was born in Pontiac, which is actually 10 minutes away from campus. And so I find it pretty cool too, along with Sam, that I'm not too far from my roots, where I was born. And so I continue to see, whenever I do drive through Pontiac to go back home to Milford, I see the agency where I was raised at, and I see the buildings that I remember seeing when I was a young kid. And even still today, like when I do go to Pontiac, I'm like, I remember that building when I was playing on the playground at this foster care system, or this home, or this and that. And I think for me, my identity was more lost in the fact of trying to be as normal as everyone else, but finding that it's really cool to be unique and really cool to be proud of the blessings that I've earned, and not earned, but like have given and received. And so in my own life, my identity was more along with accepting love from others, especially knowing that they're not going to abandon me, that they're not going to forsake me, that they're not going to leave me, because that's still something that I still struggle with today with friends, or with even still some of my family members, where I have to realize that they're not leaving me. And if they were, it's okay to let some people go. And so my identity has been falling short because of that. But as I learn and I grow as a person, I understand that I am who I am, and I have the people in my life for a reason, and just to enjoy those moments while I have those moments. And so my life has been one crazy up and down roller coaster, but I'm forever thankful for everything I've gone through, and I would not change it for the world.
And so I absolutely love both of your stories, right? And so one of the things that you guys both hit on was that identity piece, which I love because that is what I was going to ask you. Like you said, Sam, a lot of us, if somebody asks us, oh, like, who are you? Or what are your grandparents like? Or what is like your family lineage? You know, we're able to kind of say, oh, well, my great grandfather was this or was that, and it kind of gives us some sense of identity even if we never met them because we know where we came from. And so, Sam, what were some of the things that you've had to do being more like as you got older, like in your older teenage years, to help you really hone in on your identity when you didn't always have that person that maybe you could go to and say, hey, tell me about grandma or tell me about this? What were some of the things that you had to do to help kind of get into line, like what your identity was?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, it's tough when you don't have blood relatives to kind of gauge, like, okay, well, my dad was a mechanic, and so that's the sort of thing that I've been around my whole life, or that you could say it's in my blood or whatever, right? I didn't have any of those comparisons to compare anything to. And as I got older, right, it was less, it was kind of this detachment, right? I had to become more okay with not knowing where I came from and focus on what I can become, just me, right? So it was kind of this internal battle of figuring out what I want to do with me, what makes Sam Sam. And through that, it was me becoming an athlete, being, just good at school, doing my own things to build a name for myself. And as that continued down in life, and I think it's kind of funny that now I end up here doing podcasts and sharing these stories, something that if you would have, asked me 10, 12 years ago, I'd have been like, me on a podcast? What? Nah, no way. Like, I'm never, like, there's nothing to tell. I don't have, like, again, who am I? I don't have a story to tell. And I guess it was through that kind of internal battle of figuring out that, hey, I actually think I do have something to tell. I just need to tell it to somebody because, like Nikki had mentioned, I think it's unique. It's unique in the fact that we don't have necessarily that blood father figure to, like, kind of mold us or shape us or help us figure things out. While obviously we do have very good parents that chose us, it definitely makes it a little bit harder to kind of find yourself without having someone as connected with you. It makes it more of a personal journey. So that's something that I've really learned to respect about myself, is that, I feel like I've kind of had to fight for who I want to be, and really just keep on trucking forward and not focus so much on, where I came from, because at the end of the day, that's not necessarily what's so important to me. I do think it is, a cool story, and it'd be great to know, to have known my parents, my biological parents, and to have grown up in the same household as them. But at the end of the day, I have two loving and great parents who have shown me and put me down on amazing paths that have led me to becoming the person that I am today. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to shape ourselves. We're all trying to create our own stories. So that was something that I always had to take into account, is, hey, I have to create my own story. I don't care what my biological grandpa did. I don't care what my biological mom did. I'm not them. At the end of the day, I'm here to build a name for myself and to, just live my life as best as I possibly can.
And I think there's so much beauty in that. There's so much beauty because sometimes the curse in knowing everything about your past is that you feel like you have to become something because everyone did. So you have that kid who's like, well, my dad was a barber. Now I have to be a barber. Or I have to take over the family shop, or I have to do something like that. And I think the beauty in being able to write your own story is that you kind of get that fresh slate and you get to create who it is you want to be. And then you get to say, from here moving forward, this is going to be the lineage of my family, of my life, and of my story. And so I really love that you said that, Sam. And so, Nikki, my question for you, I love that you said that that you had like a blood relative with you. And I think that is really different because not everybody in the system is blessed to have that. And so, but what role do you think being in the system a little longer, like you said, until you were 6, what role do you think that plays in how you view adoption compared to somebody maybe like Sam, who doesn't really have much of a remembrance of being in the actual system?
Yeah, this is actually interesting because I just had a conversation with somebody the other day where she adopted a 13-year-old, and I was like, "Oh, that's so cool. Like what brought you to that place of like wanting to adopt such like an older child?" And she said that the daughter, and she knew like what age does this daughter stop needing a mom or stop needing a parent? And I think that like really resonated with me because there is no age limit on like when a child stop needs a parent. Like you go throughout life, and I still call my mom every single day, or I call my mom whenever I need something, like a little thing done. And so I think it's really cool that I got to see that part of like insight where the older youth, they still need parents, they still need people. And so I think it's interesting that the system really does have it set up for babies to be adopted easier than, let's say, like the toddlers to preteens, even teenagers. And so I feel lucky that I was grabbed at the time that I was, being at 6 years old, because even then, I'm still dealing with like the psychological effects of not having that like nourishment in my early years. And so I see a therapist, and recently I was just talking to him, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, like in my file, I read that this happened to me at this age." And he looked at me and he's like, "You just said that was so normal. Like that was normal for you to have a file." And I looked back at it and I'm like, "You're right. Like not every kid has a file on like their early years of their life and what happened to them and things that they went through and how they reacted to things." And so when I do look at my file, it's a thick piece of paper of just the things that happened, and I have to sit there and process, okay, these were things I couldn't control, but I can control the future. I can control how I react to the things that happen to me now. And in my past, when I read through, 4-year-old me would have a ton of tantrums, nightmares, the whole nine. I was just a very violent kid. I don't know if you could tell, but I'm not a violent person anymore. But as a kid, I was very violent, and there was reasons behind it. And it's cool that I'm able to kind of research myself and see, okay, like that's the reason why I react the way I do to these things and to this. And so unlike Sam, I think other people that don't, or like Sam, I guess, that they go through adoption at a younger age than I guess the age of 6, they don't get a file as deep, and they don't get to see and hear like how they reacted to things growing up. And so I think that's really cool that I get that experience, and my brother also gets that experience. Like I like how Sam said that he didn't really like have that blood relation, really expectations. But I was blessed enough where my adoptive parents kept in contact with my grandparents on my dad's side, which is super interesting. And so I have a brother, Ryan, on that side. And Ryan, he is 30 years old and I'm 21. So like there's a difference there. And so he kind of takes us in under his wing. And I see that he was an athlete. So I see the athletic ability in me and my brother as well. And my brother Cole and I were very athletic, but also we're very like my grandparents with like the hard work drive and just everything else that their personalities and characteristics reflect. So it's really interesting to see like I get to read my past, but I also get to see my future within my brother and my grandparents as well.
If you are just now tuning in to this week's episode of Unmute Your Mic, I am currently talking to Sam and Nikki, and we are talking about their story of adoption. So if you could please continue to listen in and hear what else they've got to say. I love that. And I think that's so important for people to hear, because even though you all share your story about adoption, a lot of the things that you talk about are things that people who even haven't been adopted have struggled with.
Mm-hmm.
Identity crisis. I know people who not even to be funny, but people who probably wish they were adopted just because their life and the situations that they've come from have been so terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I definitely, I don't know what you all believe, but I think that God is very intentional about where he places people, intentional about the people that he puts into our lives. And so I love that you all have such a positive outlook on it, because it could definitely be the other way around, and it could just be like, woe is me, and this is so sad. But I think this is how you guys are truly going to be able to reach people and make a difference, because here are two people from two completely different backgrounds, but you share such an important and impactful story. And so, Sam, if you could just take a couple of minutes and speak to that person who's listening, who maybe has gone through adoption and doesn't have such a positive outlook, or they're struggling with identity. If you could just speak something to encourage them, because you've been through it. So, you're able to give a perspective that I wouldn't be able to give on this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you said, I mean, not everyone is going to have a positive outlook on it. There's so many ways to find, the negativity in it. And it's like, oh man, I don't know my adopted parents. Like, I'm a nobody, right? Like, you can have those feelings. I had those feelings at one point. Like I said, like, I didn't know who I was. And it's kind of that cliche of, when life knocks you down, how are you going to react? Are you going to get back up, or are you going to stay down type of a situation? And, it's just kind of like that. It's how you choose to react to it. And it's your optimism or pessimism that is going to kind of help you out. And I think it's important that if there are other people, and I'm sure there are, that haven't adopted and are having these kind of same feelings, or still going through these same feelings, is that you have to realize, just like Jessica said, that God is very intentional about what he does. You are there for a very deliberate reason, and don't think anything less than that reason. Like, we are all exactly where we need to be. We are with who we need to be with. We are at the right place at the right time all the time. And, when it comes to something like adoption, that seems, that can seem so, I guess, morbid, we'll say. Not knowing who your biological parents are. I think it's up to that person to realize that, hey, I have a story. I am unique in the fact that, like you said, Jessica, I can write my own story. I'm not bounded by anyone's, ideas, or I don't have any expectations of, my dad did this, the family business was this. You can do whatever it is that you want to do. And, whatever anyone's going to say about, oh, but, you don't know your parents, you're not, those aren't really your parents. It's kind of like, they are my parents, though. Like, they may have not given birth to me, but kind of like that joke that I always say, and that's why I like it so much, because it works so well, even if it's not really a joke, is they chose me. At the end of the day, they chose me, and I'm here now, and it's my duty that, they didn't have to adopt me, right? I could have been stuck in foster care, and there's kids like that. All right. The system is a brutal place. There's kids that never make it out of the system. So, and I love the way that Nikki always puts it, is that it's a blessing. Whether you want to look at it as a deliberate blessing or a blessing in disguise, it's a blessing. And it's up to you to go and make the best of that life that God gave you. So that's all I can say, is go make the best of that life that your parents and God gave you.
I love that. And just making, the beauty out of the ashes, right? And I love that. That's definitely what it is. And Nikki, if you could just take a couple of minutes to do the same thing, just encourage people who are listening who, maybe are struggling or they just need to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
It's actually it's pretty cool how God works, because 2 summers ago I was at this summer camp and I had no intentions of like sharing my adoption story with really anyone there, but this camp was for children that were going through foster care, adoption, abuse, divorce, like anything that their family was going through. They were sent to this camp just to find some light, and this camp was to share the gospel with these children. And so I just hopped on. God kind of just put this in my path, and I just felt the call to go. So signed up, went, and I didn't know why God had me there until the last day when I was just playing foosball with this girl. Didn't really know the girl at all, but she kind of looked like me when I was a child. And she looked to me and she's like, I'm going back into the foster care system. My parents are officially like dropping me off tomorrow. And my heart broke in half. And this was a perfect opportunity to share with her what I like, and advice that I would provide for anybody else that's listening, that's going through this or knows of somebody that may go through this or is going through this. And it is that God prevails, that God will never abandon you. He will never forsake you, and he will never fail you. That's Deuteronomy 29. It's around the wall, but just knowing that God is always there and that he provides light for you is so important. And I wish I knew that early on in my life and didn't have to go through that battle, that internal battle for so long. Because honestly, when I accepted Christ into my heart, my life became full, and I truly understood my role as a daughter in Christ, but a daughter in my family as well. And so I told her, like, here's some scripture. I don't know if you're going to open it today. I don't know if you're going to open it tomorrow or 15 years down the road. Does not matter, because it's not for me to decide that for you. It's for me to provide this tool for you and to allow you to do what you want with it. I believe that like being a Christian, it's really hard because we like have that portray, like we force it down other people's throats. But I feel like it's more of a treasure that we found, and we want to share that with the world, because for me, it's brought me so much good, and I just want that for everybody else. So this is not me trying to push it down anyone's throat, but it is me just trying to share the hidden gold I found along the way. And that's what I provided for this young girl that also reminded me so much of myself at that time in my own life.
I love that. And like you said, you don't want to push it down anyone's throat, but when you're sharing your story, that's the beauty of sharing your story, because you get to share what got you through your specific story and how you got to be where you are today. And I'm so blessed and honored to have met both of you. I also know that you are more than just your adoption story, right? You have a whole life and things that you have overcome outside of that. And so if you guys could just take a minute and talk about your podcast, how they can find you, how people can connect with you so that they can learn more about your story.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, our podcast is very similar to unmute your mic, and the fact that, we're essentially trying to find people to share their stories. We want to hear about, those darkest moments, because just like with adoption, there's a light in it. There's a light in every dark moment, and we just got to find it. So we are looking for anybody with a story that they want to share, and we promise you that we will find a light in it. You can connect with us at Moonlight Dancers with 2 S's at gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram, which is Dancing in the Moonlight Podcast. So go ahead and you can connect with us there. DM us, just share, like, follow, anything you can to just spread the word that we are out there, and we are looking for people to share their amazing stories, because we know everyone has them.
And can I ask really quickly, where did you get your name from? I'm huge on names and I love names. So why did you choose that name for your podcast?
So I'll take this one away. So I'm an RA at my my university, and for the longest time, Sam and I, we sat down, we're like, okay, like we want to start this, we want to do this. And we were kind of just going through names, and something that somebody wrote on my word cloud to describe me was Moonlight. And so I asked my mentor at the time, I'm just like, what do you think this means? Like, what is moonlight to you? And she's like, well, it's just like the light within the darkness. And that's something that you do. And when I talk to Sam and I are very similar even with our adoption, but with just everything else just seems very similar between us. And we're just two people that love to bring the light out of the darkness. And we like to kind of dance in it, kind of tease the darkness and be like, look, you can't stop us from dancing within these situations, within this life moment that we choose to be bright and happy and joyous in, rather than being down in the dumps and kind of just choosing that negativity route. We choose to be dancing in the positive light, because in every situation, no matter if you see it within the moment or later down the road, is some good that comes out of everything. You got to take the good in the bag. It's like yin and yang. And so we believe that that's where our name came from, is just finding the light, darkness, and just teasing. So, yeah.
I love that. I love the positivity. I love the heart behind your podcast. I love your stories. And I just want to thank you both again for agreeing to be on Unmute Your Mic, for sharing just a little bit of your story. And I know somebody is going to be impacted. And I just pray anyone who's listening that you would reach out to Sam, Nikki. If you have more questions about their story, please follow their podcast. I'm going to put all of their information down below so you know how to connect with them. Please follow them on all of their social media pages. As always, you have listened to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. My name is Jessica Bell. I am your host. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, all under Unmute Your Mic. And continue to be bold, be brave, and tell your story. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Unmute Your Mic. Be sure to tune in next time when Jessica takes her mic off mute as she continues her journey to find stories that inspire and uplift our communities.